Hi and welcome to my channel Sonic Forge. My name's Dave and today I'm going to be taking you through a tutorial showing you how to make a MIDI performance out of real recorded drums. This is not a drum mixing tutorial as much, but you're going to see my workflow for creating a MIDI performance from start to finish, as well as using that MIDI to trigger audio samples. You can use this across all styles and genres, whether that be metal, pop or radio rock, anything really, and we'll give you supreme freedom and flexibility over samples. It will give you accurate control over gates rather than a one setting for all scenario with a gate plugin, ensuring gates are opening and closing at proper times and letting you control the velocities that you want to use to reinforce your drum production. So let's get started. Okay, so let's listen to what we have. So you can hear it's a simple rock style performance that's played fairly well, but could benefit from some sort of sample reinforcement. We want to retain the dynamics of the performance as much as possible to keep it sounding natural. One thing I want to note is that these drums are edited somewhat, but they're not 100% to the grid. At times it can sound a bit loose, but that's what we have to work with on this occasion, and they certainly aren't the worst drums I've heard before. We are going to turn this drum performance into MIDI information that we can use to make a quality sounding drum track. So first we're going to have a listen to the individual tracks so we can hear what the bleed is like and what we need to clean up, and decide how we're going to use Trigger to clean up these tracks. Let's listen around track by track, and we're going to analyse the close mics first. So we'll solo the kick in, go to the beginning of the track and just take a listen. So as you can hear from that, there's a degree of snare getting into our kick mic, and we'll need to control that. Next, let's have a listen to the snare top. And as you can hear there's a degree of some kick getting into our snare mic, and we can hear the toms quite loudly in that snare mic too. Speaking of toms, let's take a listen to the toms. We can listen to both of these together. Just going to go to this tom section up here. And you can hear quite loudly at the end, just before I stop that you can hear quite a lot of snare in those tom mics. All of the close mics have an element of bleed that I want to control. If you have multiple sources for each individual drum, then you want to choose the most dynamic sounding source to accurately translate into a MIDI performance. Snare bottom mics generally have good isolation, but the dynamics are generally too flat to get an accurate MIDI performance out of. I'm going to choose the kick in, the snare top and the two tom tracks to pull MIDI information out of. So next we're going to be setting up our triggers. We're going to set up 4 group channels and name them kick, snare, tom 1 and tom 2. So let's do that now. So we shall create our 4 stereo group tracks. And we shall name them as such. We have kick, snare, tom 1 and tom 2. Next we want to set up sends for all the tracks, so we want to route to these groups. So let's go into our mixer. I'm going to highlight all the tracks that we want to route out to the group tracks that we just created. Bring down our sends. I want to make sure Q-Link and absolute mode is enabled. And we're going to select kick, snare, tom 1, tom 2, turn all these on, and make sure these are all post fader like they are at default. We also want to solo defeat all the selected source tracks and turn those faders down to 0, so let's do that. Just hold down Alt, click on solo, and take all those faders down to 0. We also want to pan all of our sends, so if we go into the channel settings, click on the channel settings button, go to panning, send these all to the right. Turn off our Q-Link, go back in, and for each individual source track we want to put its individual send to the left. So that is the kick going to the left, come out of that one, go into snare, send that one to the left, tom 1 to the left. Oops, and we got rid of our solo safe, so we're just going to redo that. And tom 2 to the left. So just to confirm what I've done there, anything you pan to the right is what trigger will suppress, and anything you pan to the left will be what needs to be triggered. So we're going to start with our kick drum, and first of all I just want to bring up these group tracks all the way to the top here, just for tidiness. And if we go into our mixer window, I want to set up an instance of trigger on this group track. I want to turn our mix volume all the way down, and our gate wants to be on. I'm just going to copy these to the other group tracks. And we also want to set up our input volume within trigger, which is this knob here. What we want to do, we want to catch the very peaks of our audio going into trigger. So as you can see visually, the loudest part of our track would appear to be here, so we're just going to create a loop so we can hear that. Turn that on. And if I go to our trigger, as you can see, the very loudest peaks are being, they're at the top of the window, so that means they're either at full volume or they're being chopped off. We don't want that. We want to accurately get the velocities from these tracks. So I'm just going to bring down the volume. So let's try -2. See what happens there. Yep, that appears to be good. That seems to be getting the loudest peaks and they're not chopping off on the top of the window there. We also want to do the same for our snare and our toms, so if we just stop that, bring that back up. Let's have a quick overall view. Yeah, I mean this appears to be our loudest section here. So again, I'm just going to go into our snare trigger and we'll get the loudest parts for that. Yeah, you can see they're being chopped off, so let's have a look at -3. Still being chopped off. Let's try -3.5. Yeah, that appears to have got that. So that's fine. And then if we just look for a tom section to look at. The thing about these toms is that they are in volume quite a lot quieter, so I don't even think that we'll need to even change the volume input on these, but we'll have a look anyway. So if we go into our let's just minimize those down, we'll listen to both of them at the same time. So in our trigger, yeah, you can see they're not being chopped off at all, so they're going to be fine at 0 dB. So next we want to go into our trigger settings just to make sure that they are set up correctly. So if we just go into the kicks trigger in the settings here, I want the MIDI out enabled. These are set to C1 currently, and I want the latency set to normal. So the same should be for the snare, which it is, and the same for tom 1, yep, tom 2, so just confirm MIDI out C1, latency in normal mode. So next we want to adjust the sensitivity, retrigger and details for all the tracks until you get all the hits coming through accurately. These settings will be different for different projects, and each time you will need to adjust the settings appropriate for those source tracks. So just going to go and solo the kick. Got a loop going on here. Just start that off. So currently we have nothing being suppressed, so I'm just going to bring that up. And we're not getting all our hits coming through, so I'm going to bring back the detail here, so we are starting to pick up all our kick hits. And I think our retrigger could come down as well. So if I bypass that, that's where the snare is going to be. And you can see our, or hear our kick has been nicely gated there. So I'm going to do the same for the snare. So let's start off our loop again. So I'm just going to take our suppression up. I'm not going to go 100% on this one, but about 42 should do it. And again, we're going to dial down the detail because we're not picking up all our hits there. So again, if we bypass that. Okay, that's been nicely gated, so that should be picking up all our parts. We can always readjust afterwards if we find out any hits are being missed, but that appears to be a good figure there for now. So stop that, and let's have a listen to our toms. So if we, I tell you, we'll just do the first tom first. So we just need to find a nice section here for the toms. I think this section again should do. to suppress these 100%. Just going to take up our detail and I think that's getting all our hits. The thing with toms is it can vary from section to section on how accurate you're going to get this the first time round. So we may find, well, I might have a lot of misfires which we'll need to tidy up afterwards. But that should do for now. And just quickly do the second tom here. Trigger in. Okay, so start that off. So suppression on that. Dial down the detail. And let me re-trigger on that. Just going to check the re-trigger on the tom 1. Just bring that down as well. So together. Yeah, so we're still picking up some snares there, so we're going to have to go through and do a bit of tidying up afterwards. It's better to have more information to take away than having to add it later, so this doesn't really concern me right now that I'm getting those extra re-triggers coming through. The problem with trigger is that it's all automatic normally, and you can't edit triggers within the plugin manually. This is why we're going to print out the MIDI and edit that manually afterwards. This gives us a lot more control. That's the end of part 1 of this tutorial. If you join me in part 2, where we're going to go over initially printing out our MIDI and then going through and checking our work for any mistakes or misfires. See you in part 2.